Hello, and welcome to my assessment of the Brooklyn Bus Redesign. This draft plan was released relatively recently to me recording this, so I definitely want to dive straight into it. As you know, bus redesigns are done to bring routes and bus networks up to speed with the needs of their riders, meeting the demands of riders in the 2020s with newly designed routes, instead of keeping the same network around that was in existence decades ago. As certain routes are not as effective in areas of speed, coverage, usefulness, and reliability as they should have been, or as they once used to be, said routes are altered and modified and incorporated with brand new routes in order to re-achieve their usefulness. The Brooklyn Bus Redesign is meant to interweave with the Queens Bus Redesign and take effect sometime in 2024. There's a lot to unpack here, so without further ado, let's jump in. On December 1st, the same day that the last 2022 XD40 7975 was delivered to Omer Park, the MTA released their Brooklyn Bus Redesign draft plan. In this new redesign plan, 4 routes, the B2, B24, B32, and B84, get deleted from existence. However, we'll still have routes like the B53, B57, and B62 venturing into Queens. The B39 will also remain, meaning that there will still be a Brooklyn local route that goes into Manhattan. There were not as many proposed route cuts as there were in the Queens redesign, but Grand Avenue will be the one experiencing the greatest route loss under this current plan. There are not as many Brooklyn routes cut in the plan as there were Queens routes to be cut, which is a good sign. Let's touch on the key reroutes first. The B6 and B11 are getting very slight reroutes. The B25 will have a short turn at Franklin Avenue heading westbound overnight, with the rest of the service to downtown Brooklyn being handled by the A train or B26. The B26 and B52 will continue along Fulton Street for a greater duration than they currently do, receiving a greater runtime on said street, while the B38 will be cut from one of its terminals. The B41 will become a select bus service route, just as it pretended to be in 2020. However, the B41 local will also remain. The B43 and B44 will be routed via alternate avenues. The B49 will also experience an avenue shift. The B45 will have a new connection to the C train at Ralph Avenue. The B47 gets a slight reroute along Kings Highway. The B48 will no longer serve Greenpoint, as it is getting a massive reroute to York Street on the F, newly linking this station with Church Avenue on the B and Q, while also continuing to provide connections with the CNG, and being an alternative to the Franklin Avenue shuttle. I never knew that the B48 was a sub-in for the Franklin shuttle before. I'm learning new things from this redesign document. The B65 will be rerouted to run via Atlantic Avenue. The B68 will be shifting from west to east on its southern end, as will the B69 on its northern end. The B83 is getting streamlined, with the rest of its route being covered by various other routes. The B100 is being rerouted via Avenue R. As for route cuts, some routes like the B15, B20, and B103 have been cut massively. The B15 will no longer be able to venture into JFK Airport. The B20 will no longer go to Fresh Pond, and the B103 will no longer go to downtown Brooklyn. Dun dun dun! Wow, that took it out. The B6 and B67 will receive mod cuts. The B46 will no longer run to Williamsburg Bridge Plaza, making the B44 and its select bus variant the only flatbush routes to service this area. As for route extensions, the B7 is getting an extension to connect with Forest Avenue and Fresh Pond Road on the M line, and therefore start service closer to its native depot. The B16 is getting extended to East Flatbush. The B57 will go as far north as Jackson Heights, so it will get to see LaGuardia routes in the future. The B62 will head north into Astoria territory. As far as route replacements go, the B44 Select Bus service will venture along Avenue Z in southern Brooklyn to replace a portion of the B1. The B49 will replace the southern portion of the B68, while the B68 takes a different route. The B64 will replace a portion of the B82 that runs to Coney Island. Massive L for B82 riders in my opinion, especially since I remember riding the B82 to Coney. However, the B82 will retain its connection to the B and Q trains at Kings Highway, so this is a good thing. This means that the 82 local will terminate in the same region as the 82 select. Some routes like the B31, 36, 37, 39, 42, 46 select bus service, 54, 63, 74, 82 select bus service, Q54 and Q56 were considered perfect and will therefore retain their current routing. The B39 was a surprising one for me, until I found out from fellow staff on my server that the route exists to fulfill an ADA accessibility requirement at Essex Street. I'm glad that the B54 remains as such, as it's essentially a stand-in for the once existing Myrtle Avenue L. To simplify and streamline routes, new routes have been proposed. The B5, B10, B27, B40, B53, B55 Select Bus Service, B66, B76, and B81, 9 brand new routes, have been envisioned by the redesign. The B5 will take a similar route path as the B6. It will also replace the B84 as well. The B27 will replace a portion of the B57. The B40 will be created as an offshoot of the B41, replacing a segment it currently serves and simplifying the B41. The B53 will replace a portion of the B46, running along the J line from Marcy Avenue to Broadway Junction, serving as a backup if anything occurs to the route, while replacing the B24 along Greenpoint Avenue, as it connects Brooklyn with Sunnyside. The B55 will do what the B15 once did, in service to JFK Airport, but much faster because it will be select. The B66 will replace a large portion of the B60. The B76 will replace some stops on the B17. The B81 will replace a portion of the B61. The B27 and B81 will replace some of the B69. As for where I feel the new route should go, in my opinion, the B5 should go to Omer Park. The B10, B53, B66, and B76 should go to East New York Depot, though some could also make the case for the B53 and B66 to go to Grant. The B40 should go to Flatbush, while the B27, B55 Select Bus Service, and B81 should go to Jackie Gleason Depot. As for route assignments, with the B20 being cut, I feel that it should be reassigned to East New York Depot. Some routes may shift depots due to this, but it is up to the MTA's discretion. As for the express routes, there are no routes expected to be cut by the redesign. Instead, the MTA decided to give the express routes the SIM treatment. The BM1 to BM4 are being snapped into 2 parts each, snapped in half, snapped into a downtown variant and a midtown-downtown combination service. Yep, you guessed it, this is how the routes will look. Meanwhile, the X27 to 28 and X37 to 38 will cease to be known as such, ultimately ending the era of express routes referred to as X, while Omer Park holds the title of having the last routes with said designation. I am not including the X80 and X81 for obvious reasons. Weirdos. Anyway, the X27 will become the BM7 and BM7C. The X28 will become the BM8 and BM8C. The X37 will become the new BM37. Lastly, the X38 will become the BM38. Meanwhile, 4 new routes, the BM31 to 34, will be created as peak hour variants of the BM1 to BM4. That sounds a little redundant to the BM1C to BM4C, but that's just my opinion. Meanwhile, the BM35 will just be a rebranding of the BM5. This plan will raise Brooklyn's total of express routes from 9 to a whopping 19. A massive fleet expansion would definitely have to be in order for this, especially on the express side. The Q8, Q24, Q35, Q51 Select Bus Service, Q54 to Q56, Q58 to Q59, Q68, Q98 Select Bus Service, and Q109 were also included in the Brooklyn Bus Redesign, as the redesign goes in tandem with Queens' redesign. As for the Queens routes which interact with Brooklyn, the Q8 will go to New Lives Avenue to connect with the 3, as mentioned in my Queens redesign commentary from April, shameless plug. The Q59 will get a more direct routing to Marcy Avenue, which I feel is smart. The Q68 will replace the B24 as it goes to Williamsburg Bus Terminal. Through reading this redesign, I found out for the first time that the B6 has special overnight stops. Very interesting. I low-key forgot about those, even though Manhattan has them too. It seems like in this plan, the buses will fulfill what the trains can, while providing several beneficial subway connections to the riders of Brooklyn, in order to make their trip across the borough easier. Several routes are experiencing stop cuts. For the most part, each local and express route will have less stops than before, to simplify and speed up travel time, save for the routes that are receiving extensions. The plan seems to revolve around making one's daily commute in this borough easier and much faster, while incorporating Queens routes into Brooklyn to improve interborough travel. Of course, if you have problems with the plan as a Brooklyn resident, you may attend one of the several meetings listed here. In order to pull this plan off, a lot of fleet expansion is necessary. This will likely come in the form of new bus orders between now and 2024, and maybe even the years to come. The 670 articulated bus order, with the 425 options being in that 670 number, will likely play a major role in this. As the B41 is going select, it will be a good idea for Flatbush to get more Arctics. Some have brought up the B49 as well as the B55 select bus service potentially going Arctic. Flatbush getting more Arctics would avoid the prospect of 40-footers going into select bus service duty again, as well as the current ones at East New York remaining in said scheme. They likely have to be freed up for other routes such as the B10, B53, 66, 81, and others. East New York and Grand Avenue will likely be fully Excelsior at this time, joining Ulmer Park and others, and other orders like the 60 electric bus order, followed by the 370 electric bus order, 368 CNG order, of that order 155 being for New York City Transit, and 348 diesels from the 713 standard bus order could come straight into this plan. I doubt that any next gens will make it into this plan. If they somehow do, it'll only be the ones at Fresh Pond, Flatbush, JFK, and LaGuardia. Coneheads coming into Brooklyn via the Queens connector routes will definitely be foam. It seems like Flatbush will lose a route, the B2, and gain 2, the B40 and B41 select bus service, increasing their route count to 9 routes. East New York currently has 14 routes, but they could gain up to 4 new routes, and if it does, not only will it regain its title as the kingpin of Brooklyn, but it will also carry a large portion of the borough on its shoulders. They could have as many as 17 bus routes, but if Grand steps in, said depot could have as many as 9 routes, which is as many as they have now, while East New York will have 15. This is the case for sending the B53 and B66 to Grand. Gleason will likely have 17 routes, while Ulmer Park will likely have 7 local routes and 6 express routes. Spring Creek, due to having the majority of the proposed express routes, might need a larger fleet in the future. Again, this is not considering potential route trades that the MTA might decide to do, and it is not considering routes from the Queens redesign, like the Q68 and Q98 select bus service, potentially being assigned to Brooklyn depots. I like the concept of rush routes like the B20, B26, and Q35, and peak routes like the BM31 to BM35. Under the plan, there will be a bus route for every number between B40 and B49, and B60 to B69. Nice. Allow me to provide some extra info from an external source concerning the plan. According to New York One, over 1,000 bus stops will be eliminated, increasing frequency on 24 routes, and will increase the routes expected to serve Brooklyn from 62 to 69 on the local side and from 9 to 19 on the express side, increasing the overall route count from 71 to 88. It will also add 5 overnight routes and increase Long Island Railroad access. 18 hearings will occur, with the first happening on January 11, 2023, and as previously stated, they will go into effect by 2024. Also, special shout out to those on my server, as I referenced a few of their observations and proposals in addition to several of my own notes, glances, studies, and ideas on the redesign to produce a fully enjoyable and comprehensive take on the MTA's future plan. Essentially, they touched on some stuff I missed at first glance, and made the changes understandable from a Brooklyn rider's perspective. I can't wait to see what the future holds for Brooklyn. This will be pretty sweet. Thank you for tuning in to hear my analysis of the new Brooklyn redesign draft. Please subscribe, stay blessed, stay healthy, stay hype, and thank you for riding with Next Stop News.